Okay, Carrie, good job. Really great job. Cover looks great. Great, wonderful symbiotic relationship between the image and the type. Good job presenting the type in white. I think it creates this wonderful relationship with the snow-capped mountains. I think the cover is just gorgeous. Very, very nice work. Table of contents, as you can see, I've drawn a center line here. I just pulled out Command R to bring my rulers out. I drew a center line here. And I think that clearly this is not a good situation where the table of contents type encroaches through and across the center line onto the left-hand side of the spread. I would definitely compose that somewhat differently so that the table of contents is on the right-hand side of the page. You have the image on the left. Interesting bleed on the image. Really interesting job there. But I've noticed that you've used that treatment on the first 3 pages, where you've got the bleed to the outer margin and then equal margins on the top and bottom, and then equidistant, well, almost equidistant from the center line. At least these 2 pages look to be. So I think that creates kind of how do I say this? A less than dynamic page structure for the first 3 pages, since they're the same, basically the first 3 pages. As I said, I think we could create some variance there that would create a little more action and a little more excitement to the viewer. So, I mean, quite feasibly, you could create, you could use 2 images or whatever you want to do, just as long as it fits within the grid. And you preserve this wonderful white space that you're using on the right-hand side, on the text side of the page. So, yeah, I think that definitely would create some visual interest in the first few pages of the presentation. Okay, moving on, this page looks fantastic, but the one thing I want to recommend here is that you've got your images that are spread across the center line. Now, it's okay in this spread, but as you see in this spread, it's probably not going to be as interesting as this. And the reason being is because these are horizontal oriented images, while this is a vertically oriented image. So it's kind of a split there. It's going to create some distortion. Just as long as you know that, it's going to create some distortion. So I would say, maybe use that technique sparingly. Another reason I think that it works over here and not here is because these are offset, whereas this is centered. So that's going to create a little bit of page fold right there. It's going to create some distortion. So that might not be the most advantageous situation right there. Again, you can keep the images, but maybe think about a different way of placing this third image. Or work that out. That's just a very unusual situation right there. Other than that, I think your page looks good. This is what I'm talking about. See, this is interesting. I think this is very interesting where you're kind of spreading the image across the page. That's an interesting technique. I don't know if I would use it on the top and the bottom because a lot of your pages you're using these same techniques and kind of creating the symmetry. So this page is basically a mirror image of itself. So maybe this image you don't bleed all the way around like you have here, or well, at least on 2 sides. Maybe this image is more of a different presentation, just for some variation. This is really interesting right here. I love this page. I think it's super interesting. Good job. Another very, very nice page. I'm so glad to see you're not afraid to use white space. It's so refreshing. I love it. The ampersand here, I wouldn't use that, but that's just really confusing. And I think that's part of the typeface itself. I think one of your classmates had mentioned it, and I tend to agree. It's really confusing. It's like color at pattern. It's confusing. Typography for pictograms. This page looks great. Good job on the adjustments here. Really nice work. One thing I noticed on this page, typography and pictograms, is there's no written description. So I'm wondering if maybe you move the pictogram headline up there and include a little body copy there describing the relationship between the pictograms and your branding package. So how do the pictograms fit in the scheme of things? Same thing with the typography. One thing I'm also noticing is that all of your headlines are flush left with the body copy. So to remain true to the grid, it would also be flush left with this placement of this graphic right here. So I would recommend moving your pictogram so the P aligns with the left margin of the first column of images. This seems to be pushed over as well, the T in typography, so I would align that with the left column of your type over there. This is very interesting. Great job, including examples of the typeface. One thing I would recommend, though, is you're saying that the header is that Unic 2, but the only thing is, and you're using title case here. You're using a capital first letter and then lowercase for the rest of the letters. But over here, you're saying that this is all caps. So that would be an inconsistency. I would just use H as the cap and then lowercase for the rest of the letters there. Nice looking page, though. Definitely, definitely. I think it would add a lot of consistency since everything is described verbally. Let's go ahead and describe typography and pictograms verbally as well. Same thing with apparel. I mean, go ahead and move that up and give us a little text block describing your reasoning in the apparel, the media tech, the signage and wayfinding, the sport and venue. Just a little paragraph will suffice perfectly as to describing the relationship between your use of graphics in transportation, let's say, and its relationship to your overall concept and methodology. I think that would really tie things together. That way you're not just saying to the viewer, okay, I'm done describing everything, now you're on your own. So make of it what you will. See what I'm saying? Again, over here, here's another image that spans that center, and that's going to create some distortion in the logo, and you definitely don't want that. I didn't draw the guides for the rest of that page, but I love the way that you're using these little encroaching tidbits of image over onto the next spread. I think that's pretty interesting technique. I think it's a gutsy move, but I think in the end it pays off because it's interesting. Okay, let's jump back and go through typography. Type looks good, really good. I mean, it's very airy. If anything, I think that your space between your leading between lines is a little bit too large based on the type size and the kerning that you have. So basically, if we back off of this, the typographic color is very, very light because it is, sorry about that. The typographic color is very light because, okay, hold on one second. Sorry about that. The typographic color is very light because of the size of that, the leading between your lines. I'm not sure what your typeface is, but 20% is usually a pretty good formula. So, and if that's if your type size is 10, 10 over 12 would indicate a point size of 10 and leading of 12, and that's the 20% I'm talking about. So typically two point sizes. So I would close down that leading just a little bit. I just think it's a little bit too open. It's not bad at all. Don't get me wrong. It's not bad at all. It's not harming the presentation at all. I just think that it would tightening those, especially in the table of contents page here. Think about that. Try it. Let me know what you think. If you like it, go ahead and close it down. If not, if you think it's tightening up the type too much, if you think it's adding too much tone to the typographic color of the page, then just stick with it the way it is. No widows, no orphans. Rags look pretty good. This rag right here could be adjusted here. You got this pattern, this wave pattern. You don't want that. You've also got this pattern right here where it goes like, let me find it. This is a good rag right here. That's going, creating an angle. This is good rag. Those are good rags. These are good rags, good rags. So there's just a couple of areas where the rags right there, where it's denting in like that. And then this, that wave pattern right there. You don't want things like that in your rags. Okay, so I'm just loving the layout. Oh, by the way, got to have a credits page. Absolutely have to have a credits page. Definitely. And then a back cover. All right, great job. Any questions? Let me know. Thanks.